Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, in honour of Father's Day, I've got 10 great dad books for you. So, as it's Father's Day today, I thought I would do a video about the kind of books that dads are supposed to enjoy. Kind of action-adventure type books that you would see middle-aged men reading by the pool on holiday. I certainly don't want to generalise. So, I am a dad myself. I've been a father for 15 years, and anyone who watches the channel will know that I love all sorts of different books, but I do particularly love what I would call dad books, and I've loved them since long before I became a father. So I've loved this kind of book since I was a teenager, and a lot of the books I'm going to talk about today are books that my father has enjoyed, and indeed his father enjoyed as well. So the first series of books I'm going to talk about here is one that I remember seeing on my grandfather's shelves when I was a kid and being intrigued by it. And as I grew older, I got to read them and have enjoyed that series myself as well. What I would say is this list is all fiction. So I don't read, when I think about dad books, I suppose another kind of dad book is like books about sports stars and things like that. I've got no interest in that sort of thing at all. So I'm definitely not a typical dad in that regard. I do not have any interest in sports, and I can't think of anything worse than reading a book about a cricketer or something like that. So these are all fiction, and all really in that kind of action-adventure type of genre. What I would say as well is, as I was constructing this list, I realised that pretty much all of these books are about people doing their jobs. So that's kind of one of the central themes of these books is they're about men typically going about their business, doing the things they do for a job. And that job might be that they're a cowboy, they might be, herding cattle, they might be a scientist, they might be, a detective or something like that, they might be a soldier. But it seems to me that men enjoy reading books about men doing their jobs. And I think it's a kind of classic tension that you get in this kind of fiction. That tension between the hero's responsibility to do his job, to defeat the bad guy or whatever, and his responsibility to his family. And I think that the kind of classic example of this, not a book but a TV show, is the TV show 24. So in that show, Jack Bauer, the hero, is constantly battling between his need to protect his family and look after his family, and his need to do his job and protect the wider world, often the entire world. I think that's a central theme that comes up again and again in these kind of dad books, is the idea that the hero of the book is doing a job. Anyway, let me stop waffling and get on with the list. So there's a mix here of books that are standalone books and books that are series. And where it's the series, I haven't picked a particular book. I'm just going to talk about all of the series. I think pretty much all of the books I'm going to talk about are books I've owned physical copies of at some point or another in my life. Some of them I do still have, but many of them I don't have anymore, and that's because these kind of books tend to be very popular, and therefore they haven't felt like books I've needed to hang on to, because I've known that if ever I want to read them again, I can pick up copies of them easily. So anyway, let's get on with the list. So the first series is the one that my grandfather loved and my dad loves, and I really enjoy as well, and that's the Dirk Pitt series by Clive Kessler. So this is a series of adventure novels about this character, Dirk Pitt, and his sidekick, Al Giardino, who work for the National Underwater and Maritime Agency. So they basically travel around the world investigating shipwrecks and invariably uncovering either dodgy businessmen trying to pollute the environment, or Soviet spies, trying to uncover nuclear bombs and things like that. So always loads of adventure. They always have kind of diving scenes and things like that, which are always fun to read. Clive Kessler was a very keen diver. And Clive Cussler does sometimes turn up as a character in these books, which is slightly annoying, to be honest with you. But the adventure stuff in the books is always really good fun. I think probably the best known of the series, and my personal favourite, is Raise the Titanic, where they literally try and raise the Titanic, the wreck of the Titanic, from the depths of the ocean. So that's the kind of thing you get in these books. But yeah, hugely entertaining. Okay, next up is a standalone, and that is The Eagle Has Landed by Jack Higgins, a classic novel of World War II, which is about a group of German soldiers who come over to England to try and assassinate Churchill. So it follows their kind of mission and the attempts of the Allied forces to stop them. They team up with an Irish Republican who's a character who recurred in a lot of Jack Higgins's books, but yeah, just a classic adventure story, and an interesting one because it takes as its main characters people who are effectively the bad guys. So these are, you know, kind of German soldiers rather than dyed-in-the-wool Nazis. So there is a bit of a distinction there, but they are, you know, they're basically the bad guys. So an interesting twist on the normal kind of World War II thriller. Next, another World War II one, and another author my grandfather absolutely loved, and that's Alastair McLean. So the book is The Guns of Navarone, so a more typical World War II adventure in that this one has a group of Allied soldiers on a mission into kind of occupied German territory to destroy these guns, the Guns of Navarone, which are kind of stopping Allied shipping from going through a particular shipping lane. So just a fantastic adventure novel. And the thing I love about it is, whilst there's a lot of, you know, kind of gunfights and violence and things like that, a lot of the tension and the thrills in this book come from the battle of the soldiers against the environment. So, you know, having to scale huge cliffs and things like that. So it's got a load of kind of environmental action as well as, you know, kind of soldier versus soldier action. So another fantastic adventure novel. Next one I've read much more recently, and again, you know, playing into this theme of people doing their jobs, which is common for, you know, the first three books I've talked about as well. The Cowboy and the Cossack by Clair Huffaker, which is a fantastic Western novel about a group of cowboys who travel to Russia to transport a herd of cattle to Siberia. And it's about how they team up with the Cossacks who they're delivering these cattle to. So these Cossacks are kind of trying to break free of the control of the Tsar. So you've got tons of stuff in terms of action and fight scenes between, you know, the cowboys and the good Cossacks and the Tsar's Cossacks who are trying to stop them. But also, again, loads of kind of action around kind of the weather, about them trying to get, you know, these herds of cattle across rivers and things like that. Just a really great adventure novel, but also a great novel about, you know, guys doing a job together, you know, kind of rubbing up the wrong way against each other, but, you know, building up kind of respect as well. So there's a big clash of cultures at the start of the book between the cowboys and the Cossacks, but as the book progresses, you know, they get to know each other and they build that respect for each other. So that feels like a very kind of dad type thing to me. Moving on, another series, a more recent series, a phenomenally successful one, the Jack Reacher series by Lee Child. So I certainly haven't read all of the books in this series because there are a lot, but I've read most of the early ones. So Jack Reacher is an ex-military policeman who kind of travels around America, finding people doing bad stuff and stopping them from doing it, basically. So they are, you know, kind of almost like a more popular reinterpretation of the men's adventure type book that I enjoy reading so much. They are, I think, in terms of the quality of the writing and things like that, they're probably, you know, a level above men's adventure. Lee Child does a great job of writing, you know, exciting scenarios, but also coming up with good characters. So Reacher is a great character. Some of the other recurring characters are really interesting as well, but they always have enjoyably intricate plots and things like that too. So yeah, a very enjoyable series, and I've really enjoyed the new Reacher TV series, which was on Amazon a little while ago as well. Okay, moving on then, another very well-known series, the Jack Ryan series by Tom Clancy. So the first book in that series, obviously, The Hunt for Red October, which is very well known, partly because of the very successful movie that was made based on it. Another really interesting series about a guy doing his job. So Jack Ryan, starts the series as a fairly low-level CIA analyst. Who gets involved in the theft of this Russian submarine, and as the series progresses, he progresses through the ranks of the CIA and actually ends up being president of the USA. So quite overblown in its politics, but with some fantastic plots and some really interesting characters as well. So Ryan is a solid central character, but a lot of the supporting cast of characters in these books are really interesting as well. They do tend to be very long. Clancy was one of those writers whose books got longer and longer the more of them he wrote, but nevertheless a really entertaining series of thrillers. Okay, next something a bit more scientific, The Martian by Andy Weir. Again, a very well-known book, partly because of the very successful movie that was based on it. And again, a book about a guy doing his job. So in this case, the central character is a scientist who's on a mission to Mars. He gets stranded there when the rest of the crew evacuate the planet after a disaster, thinking that he's died. And it's about him using science to try and survive. So a book that does a lot of fun stuff with the kind of popular science side of things. So it's a book you feel like you're learning something from when you read it, but also just a really, really enjoyable adventure story. Okay, next up another series, and indeed another series my grandfather loved. That's the Sharpe series by Bernard Cornwell. So a series of books about a soldier during the Napoleonic Wars, Sharpe, who kind of gradually rises up the ranks. There are loads and loads of books in this series, all of them really entertaining and covering different points in the history of the Napoleonic Wars, but really entertainingly written and always involving interesting kind of adventure type concepts. So they're never less than a lot of fun. And Sharpe is a fantastic central character. Next up, some more science, Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. Again, very well known because of the movie based on it. The book has many of the same, kind of scenes and characters and things like that as the movie, but some key differences as well. Just fantastically enjoyable. Such a great central concept. Some really good characters, incredible kind of action scenes, loads of tension, and again, some kind of interesting science concepts as well that make you feel like your brain's being stretched a little bit as you enjoy the adventure side of things. And then finally, I couldn't do a video like this without talking about a true men's adventure series. So I'm going to recommend to you the Executioner series by Don Pendleton. So a very long-running series. Pendleton only wrote the first few dozen of them. There's over 400 books in the series in total. They were published, kind of monthly in the States in the same way that Harlequin romances are. So the books would only stay on the shelves for a limited amount of time often, but just very over the top, very silly, but full of action and adventure. So Mac Bolan, the Executioner, starts as a guy who's waging a war against the mafia, who are responsible for the death of his family. But as the series progresses, he becomes more of a kind of anti-terrorist type operative and goes on missions all over the world. So they're very cheesy, they're very kind of jingoistic, but always a lot of fun. So I hope you found that interesting. Do let me know what you thought of the list, especially if you're a dad. Let me know if you've got any other dad book recommendations. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.